Hello, Scott Johnny here. In this video, we're going to talk about introverted thinking, also known as TI. Introverted thinking is one of the main cognitive functions that we all have, that we all utilize. And for the TI or introverted thinking dominant types, which are INTP and ISTP, it's a function that they know very well. It's a function that's extremely important. Essentially, when we talk about introverted thinking, we're talking about logic, we're talking about systems, we're talking about processes. But what makes introverted thinking unique is that it's more of a linear, step-by-step approach to logic. So we talked about extroverted thinking, talked about TE, and how that works. And we explained that when it comes to extroverted thinking, you have an ability to jump around the map, essentially. When it comes to logic, you don't have to follow one linear way, meaning I could be talking about lotion, right? I could say, okay, Suave, I'm using this lotion to do this. And then I could jump around with extroverted thinking to lotion and then think about how can I profit off of this lotion, or what other lotions would I like to have? All of these things are kind of jumping outside of just dealing with lotion. When we talk about introverted thinking, it's more about what is the purpose of this lotion, and it's all about delving into everything in regard to this. So we might say, why did they pick the name? Here's why they picked the name. Here's the ingredients in it. Everything is related to this one jar of lotion. It's funny. I grab lotion. I was just getting dressed for the day. So y'all don't mind me as I put more lotion on my arms and whatnot. But anyways, as you can tell, I have extroverted thinking, obviously, because I'm jumping around. But when it comes to introverted thinking, we're talking about linear logic. So for the dominant TI types, they like to become masters in what it is that they're learning. They love to understand every aspect about things. One thing I've heard about introverted thinking types, especially like the types that have it in a secondary function, like ENTPs, is that they can think about a subject and then already know everything about it, and then continue to think about that subject in a bunch of different ways they can go about it, all in that one subject, because they're so addicted to understanding the linear processes of things. So this is a very valuable function. When we talk about ISTPs, for example, these guys are known as very good builders, engineers, in a lot of cases. INTPs are known to be very good engineers, very good at process functioning. Carl Jung, the person that made this whole Jungian typology, was an INTP. And you can see why, because I'm sure he delved into the art of psychology and understood the processes of it and understood it so well. Because here's one big thing about introverted thinking. It likes to ruminate on a subject. It likes to ruminate on something. It likes to pick something apart. So one thing you'll notice about TI is that they're the types that they'll take a car apart and put the car back together piece by piece, just so they know every aspect of building that car. Every piece, every engine. It's a very linear way of building, and that's why they are very good at building, at structuring things, at following processes and following steps. Steps in themselves were created for really TE users, I say, but TI users are the ones who create the steps, because the TI users were the ones who took the time to understand the steps. So when we talk about introverted thinking, we're talking about processing things from a step-by-step basis. Another aspect about introverted thinking is it's something that is very subjective, independent form of logic. So when we talk about extroverted thinking, a lot of extroverted thinking is dependent on the outside environment, dependent on how other people view it. When we're talking about a TI user, they don't care how everybody views it necessarily. They do have that FE. If you're a TI dominant user, you do have FE, whether depending on your stack. So you do have the ability to care about how other people feel about things. But when it comes to logic and rationale, you have no problem saying what you think, because at the end of the day, you value logic, you value truth. Logic is all about what is, not about what might be, not about potentialities. Those are more intuitive things, like this what may happen in the future, more feely. Maybe if we work together. Ti is like, oh, that is sweet and cute, but like, what is going on right now? What's the bottom line? Because Ti needs that. They need to know the truth. They need to know the facts in order to make proper judgments. But there is a little bit of subjectiveness at the same time. Now, anybody that's had a conversation with the ENTP before, or a debate, or anybody with a dominant Ti, I definitely have. And what can happen sometimes is they believe so much what they think, they're unwilling to sway. It doesn't matter what kind of logic you throw at them. You can throw facts at them. You can throw the perfect reasoning, but to them, it's like very hard to move a Ti user off of what they think, because as a Ti user, they value logic so much. Whatever subjective logic they've come across and have been able to see works in their life, once they put that faith into it, it's hard to shake that, because you have to remember their logic is a very personal aspect of them as a Ti dominant user. Introverted thinking dominant types value their logic very much, and they're not very much so swayed or open to just taking on a new idea. Like, it's a very cautious way they approach new ideas or thoughts. They'll give it a little bit of room, but they have to ruminate it on their own time internally to see if that thought is really valuable. Because as a Ti dominant user, you do very much so trust your logic. So that can have you, in one aspect, be very strong-minded, very powerful, very unswayed, very much so a type of person that doesn't just go with the popular crowd. But at the same time, it can make you very stubborn, very unwilling to change, very immovable, or have a flow with the way you view things. Because that's one benefit or difference that TE users have, is they're all about getting more information and feedback from the outside. A TI user is going to say, okay, that's too much information. Like, let's take it one step at a time and let me process whether I agree with it or not. So with TI users, they can find themselves in situations where they're debating a lot, where they're not really disagreeing with people, where they can become very isolated. Because as a TI dominant user, you don't really care much about how people feel about things or their external TE thoughts about things. So it does make TI is a very subjective, grounded, this is what I know, and I'm slowly building to know more in this specific area. And then when I go to this subject, I'll learn about this subject and know everything I need to know about that. So the power of TI, just to do quick on pros and cons, I kind of did already, but the pro of introverted thinking is that you can delve into a subject and find out all the nuts and bolts of that subject. You have an ability to have that sustainability when it comes to delving into a subject and a topic. Another great thing about introverted thinking is that it's a subjective, linear way of thinking, which means it provides fresh insights. One thing I've noticed with TI is that they don't care what other people think, because it's almost as if that pollutes the purity of the thought. As an introverted thinker, you have this purity of thought that's coming from you, and you don't really want that to be tampered by a lot of people's ideas and thoughts, and the next thing you know, it's not yours anymore. So when you're talking to a TI user, you're getting to hear a perspective a lot of the time that is very unique, that is very subjective. And then just another great, amazing thing about TI people, they have amazing forms of logic. Some of your greatest mathematicians ever were TI dominant users. And the reason for that is because they were able to understand all these different ways of doing math, and they're able to follow these linear patterns as they change and adapt. They can stick with that and see it all the way through. And once they see it all the way through, what ends up happening is TI users come up with these crazy, amazing insights that you can only have come to if you give in a subject or an equation enough time to be solved or enough time to actualize. So that's the power of TI users. Very, very brilliant in that regard. Is their logic is very sound, very intelligent, and very subjective, and very untampered with and pure, coming from that individual TI user. And the last thing I'll say is truth. One thing you get from TI users is their honest opinions. They're not much so swayed by the things that like an FI user or dominant FE, where we try to shift the way we say things so that people can kind of get it in a way that's nice for them or in a way that's easier to digest. For them, they give it to you straight edge. And I think that's needed in the world sometimes, and a lot of times, where people need those harsh truths so that they can deal with the facts. And TI is all about dealing with the facts as they are according to that TI user. The negatives is of TI, very stubborn. At the end of the day, when you do have a subjective form of logic, it's very hard for you to take on other people's thoughts and ideas. So that's definitely a growing point. As TI users begin to delve more into that extroverted feeling and trust it more, where they trust specifically people who have proven themselves or people who are big time learners, that TE that they get from the other types or FE, that new logic, those new ideas can really help them in having a bigger database and helping them have more sound and backed ideas, so that when they do deal with those debates, they are not just coming from a place of, well, this is what I know, this is what I know. They can debate in a way where their counterpart knows what's going on as well. So stubbornness is big. Another one is, as much as it's great to tell the truth and the cold hard facts, a lot of the time it rubs people the wrong way. Because at the end of the day, no matter how much of a fact something may be, there's always a little bit of subjectivity to it, depending on the person's view. So for example, I could say, well, there's pollution in the air, so we're all going to just die. And it's like, well, there's pollution in the air. Yes, everybody might die from that pollution, but there's also other ways to look at it so that we can counter these things rather than just saying it's black and white. And I think that's important for TI users to not get caught up in the black and white way of just seeing things or explaining or expressing things, and see the value in learning from other people that have different views than you, and not just writing them off as very stupid or whatever. Because a lot of dominant TIs, INTPs, big time, ENTPs, ISTPs, they're very big on writing people off who they just view as stupid. And because of that, they miss out on a lot of great information, because everybody's information isn't going to come in a way that just makes sense to you or that's proven by you. So begin to not just look at someone and judge them, because TI is a judging function, in its own right. It's very much so linear. This is what I think right now. This is what I think right now. So practice the art of hearing other perspectives. It's only going to make your TI more powerful and more strong as a function. And another big thing with TI at the end of the day, it is very linear in that regard. It's hard for them to kind of shift around and see things in different ways. I've noticed with a lot of TI users, it takes a lot of time for them to understand a different perspective, and they're very nervous about that. And so this is just my message to TI users: is don't be afraid, don't worry. If somebody throws a new idea at you, you're going to be okay. If they throw new thoughts and different things at you, you can process it. Give things the room to be true. Don't be judgmental in that regard. Once you clear yourself from that judgment, once you clear yourself from thinking that, if it's not your way, or if they're not explaining in a way that's logical according to you, it's just a matter of breaking out of that subjectiveness, that subjectivity. Because at the end of the day, anybody with an introverted function is subjective. At the end of the day, like me as an FI user, I notice with me, I'm very cautious about my feelings. And so if somebody says, "Oh, let's go here," I'm down to go, but I might want to know, okay, who's going to be there, what's going to happen, like who's performing, so I can get a vibe to make sure that my feelings are protected. That's how TI is about their logic. Like, okay, well, that idea is cool. What about this? What about that? I don't really see how this will work. And this is their version of trying to figure out if this thought, this new idea, or this new thought is safe for them to delve into. Because just like the FI user, like they don't want to take the risk of being led astray, because they much so very value their logic. So for TI, give people the room to share their ideas, be open. And if you are open-minded as a TI user, you're going to be brilliant, because most TI users are extremely brilliant because they're extremely logical, and you can't beat them in that regard. In most cases, their logic is very sound, and that is the staple of society. We build amazing buildings and structures because we know that mathematically this building won't fall because of math. When I think of TI, I think of math. And math is in each of the different types, but TI very much so. I think of any TI dominant user, I think of the mathematician or the builder or the engineer. It's about math, building, structure, logic. Just like, here's the last thing I'll say, IT. Like, oh, do you do IT? And when I think of IT, if you flip it, it's TI. And I can see anybody that is an introverted thinking type can be very good at IT if they put their mind to it. If they put their mind to it, because that's a big thing with TI as well, is they have to want to do it. Because a lot of TI users that I've met are brilliant, but they're brilliant and don't even care to let the world know, because they don't have that TE drive, like to let the world know about their logic. Like, yeah, my logic was right. Like, that's a TE thing. Going out there and, TI is more so like the genius that knows the entire world, but they live in a basement somewhere and don't care about the outside world. That's a TI guy, that mad scientist that nobody ever sees because they don't care. So that's the last thing I'll say as a con or a pro, is that TI people, you're brilliant. So when you do come to these great discoveries, some of the greatest discoveries that I personally come across or learned about have come from those few TI people, or a bunch actually, really, but those TI people who were willing to say, screw it, I'll share my ideas. And when they finally do it, they change the world. Like I said, Carl Jung, prime example for any INTP that doesn't want to get out the house. Look at Carl Jung as an example. Somebody did it. Somebody got out the house and changed the world with their brilliant TI abilities. So shout out to the TI dominant users. You guys are geniuses. And keep spreading that information. Keep spreading that light, man. And don't write off everybody as an idiot, even though most of them are. I can't blame you. Give a little bit of us room to dabble with so that you can learn more. All right. And with that being said, man, that's my spiel on introverted thinking. Hope you enjoy.